A street girl warned a millionaire in an unexpected way. "Don't eat that, your wife put poison in it." When he got home to settle the score, the millionaire was stunned. One simple action could change everyone's life forever. Don't forget to subscribe for more touching stories like this. The sun was setting on the horizon of New York City, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink that contrasted dramatically with the silhouettes of the skyscrapers. On Fifth Avenue, the beating heart of the metropolis, the incessant flow of people began to diminish as the workday came to an end. Among the dispersing crowd, a solitary figure stood out. Emily, a young girl of fragile appearance, no more than 16 years old, walked barefoot on the still warm asphalt. Her eyes, a deep brown, scanned the sidewalks in search of any opportunity to get a few coins or, with luck, something to eat. Emily's stomach growled, reminding her that she hadn't eaten in over a day. Her calloused feet, hardened by years of living on the streets, barely felt the heat of the pavement as she moved silently among the hurried passers-by. As she passed by a gleaming storefront, Emily paused for a moment, observing her reflection. The dirty face and disheveled hair told the story of a difficult life, but her eyes still shone with fierce determination. She adjusted her worn-out t-shirt and continued her walk, determined to find a way to survive another day in the unforgiving city. Not far from there, in one of the most exclusive restaurants on the avenue, Michael Thompson savored a drink while waiting for his wife, Sarah. The 45-year-old businessman, known for his sharp business acumen and financial empire, seemed oblivious to the buzz around him. His thoughts were focused on an important meeting he would have the next day, a negotiation that could change the course of his company. Sarah arrived a few minutes later, her imposing presence attracting glances wherever she passed. With her perfectly styled blonde hair and a dress that certainly cost more than many earned in a month, she was the embodiment of luxury and sophistication. "Sorry I'm late, darling," Sarah said, leaning in to give Michael a quick kiss. "The traffic was terrible." Michael smiled, but his eyes remained distant. "No problem, I just got here myself." As the couple settled in for dinner outside, Emily approached the restaurant. The tempting aroma emanating from the place made her stomach growl even louder. She positioned herself discreetly near the entrance, hoping that some charitable customer would notice her presence and offer some leftovers or spare change. It was then that something unusual caught her attention. A man in a dark suit, with a serious and somewhat threatening demeanor, stealthily approached Sarah, who had momentarily stepped out to take a call. Emily, hidden behind a column, couldn't hear the conversation, but the urgent tone and furtive gestures made it clear that something suspicious was happening. Sarah seemed agitated, nervously looking around to make sure no one was watching them. She handed an envelope to the man, who quickly tucked it into the inner pocket of his jacket. The words "last chance" and "consequences" reached Emily's attentive ears, sending a shiver down her spine. Intrigued and somewhat frightened, Emily continued to observe. She saw when Sarah took a deep breath, composed herself, and returned to the table where Michael was waiting, appearing calm in contrast to the agitation of moments before. Driven by an impulse she couldn't explain, Emily felt she needed to do something. That mysterious conversation, the envelope exchanged in secret, everything indicated that Michael could be in danger. But how could a street girl approach one of the richest and most powerful men in the city? Gathering all the courage she possessed, Emily approached the restaurant entrance. The maitre d', noticing her presence, made a move to shoo her away, but she was quicker. "Please, sir, I need to speak with the man at table 12. It's urgent," she pleaded, her eyes wide with concern. The maitre d', surprised by the girl's boldness, hesitated for a moment. "Get out of here before I call security," he threatened in a low voice. Emily, however, didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on Michael, who was now chatting animatedly with Sarah, oblivious to the drama unfolding just a few meters away. At that moment, an idea occurred to Emily. She knew it was risky, that she could end up being taken away by the police, but something inside her said she had to try. With a quick movement, she escaped from the maitre d' and ran towards Michael's table. "Sir, please listen to me," she shouted, attracting the attention of everyone in the restaurant. "Don't trust her," I saw something dangerous. Michael, caught by surprise, looked at the girl with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. Sarah, on the other hand, visibly paled, her eyes widening in panic. Before Emily could say anything else, 2 security guards grabbed her by the arms, dragging her out of the restaurant. She struggled, shouting desperately, "Please, believe me, you're in danger." Michael, still stunned, watched the scene unfold, a strange feeling forming in his chest. Something in that girl's gaze, in the urgency of her voice, intrigued him deeply. "What was that?" asked Sarah, her voice trembling slightly as she tried to maintain her composure. Michael shook his head, his eyes still fixed on the door through which Emily had been dragged. "I don't know," he replied thoughtfully, "but I have a feeling I should find out." Meanwhile, on the sidewalk in front of the restaurant, Emily struggled to free herself from the security guards. Her heart was racing, not just from fear of being arrested, but from the frustration of not having been able to warn Michael. She knew deep in her soul that that man was in danger, and that somehow their destinies had become intertwined on that fateful night. As night fell over New York City, the city lights came on one by one, illuminating the now almost deserted streets. Emily, once again alone, looked up at the starry sky, making a silent promise to herself. She would find a way to help Michael, no matter what it cost. Little did she know that this decision would change the course of her life forever, dragging her into a world of intrigue, secrets, and possibilities she had never imagined existed. The next day dawned grey in New York City, as if the sky reflected the confusion that hung over Michael's thoughts. Sitting in his office atop an imposing skyscraper, he couldn't concentrate on the documents in front of him. The image of the street girl and her desperate words wouldn't leave his mind. "Mr. Thompson, your next meeting starts in 5 minutes, his secretary announced over the intercom. He sighed, running his hand through his graying hair. "Thank you, Jennifer. I'll be there in a moment." As he stood up, Michael glanced out the panoramic window. Down below, the city was bustling, millions of lives going about their courses, oblivious to the dramas unfolding in the heights. For a moment, he imagined where that girl might be now, what had led her to make such a desperate warning. On the other side of the city, Emily was waking up under the awning of an abandoned store. Her muscles ached from the confrontation with the security guards, but her determination remained unshakable. She knew she needed to find Michael again, to warn him about what she had seen. Carefully, Emily folded the tattered blanket she used to protect herself from the cold and tucked it into her worn backpack, the only possessions she had in the world. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she hadn't eaten in almost 2 days, but she ignored the hunger. She had a more important mission. As she walked through the busy streets, Emily mentally reviewed the events of the previous night, Sarah's whispered conversation with the mysterious man, the furtively exchanged envelope, the words "last chance" echoing in her ears. Something very serious was happening, and she felt that Michael was in real danger. At that very moment, in an elegant cafe in the financial district, Sarah was meeting with Jack, the man in the dark suit from the night before. Her eyes nervously scanned the place, making sure no one was watching them. "Is everything ready?" Sarah asked, her voice barely disguising her anxiety. Jack nodded, a cold smile forming on his lips. "Everything as planned. In a few days, Michael's empire will be yours." Sarah took a deep breath, a mixture of relief and guilt passing over her face. "And what about that girl? She saw us last night." "Don't worry," Jack replied, his voice icy. "She's just a street girl. No one will believe her." Meanwhile, Michael was trying to concentrate on his meeting, but his mind kept going back to the events of the previous night. Something in that girl's look troubled him deeply. There was an urgency, a sincerity in her eyes that didn't match someone just trying to get attention or ask for money. "Michael, are you listening to us?" His partner, David's voice, brought him back to reality. "Sorry, I got distracted for a moment," Michael replied, adjusting himself in his chair. "Can you repeat the last part?" David frowned, concerned. "Is everything okay? You seem worried." Michael hesitated for a moment, considering whether he should share his concerns. He decided he trusted David enough for that. "Something strange happened last night. A street girl invaded the restaurant where I was having dinner with Sarah. She seemed desperate to tell me something, warning that I was in danger. David leaned forward, intrigued. And do you believe her? I don't know, Michael admitted, but something in the business hasn't been smelling right lately. Documents disappearing, contracts being altered without my knowledge, and now this. Do you think there might be a connection? David asked, his voice lowering to a whisper. Michael shook his head, uncertain. I don't know, but I intend to find out. Can you take a look at our financial records from the last few months? Discreetly, of course. David nodded, concern evident in his eyes. Of course, I'll do that immediately. Be careful, Michael. If your suspicions are correct, you might be dealing with something much bigger than you imagine. Meanwhile, on the streets below, Emily continued her tireless search. She knew that finding Michael again would be like looking for a needle in a haystack, but she was determined not to give up. As she walked, her eyes were alert to any sign of the businessman or his wife. It was then that something caught her attention. A giant billboard announced a charity event that would take place that night, with the presence of several important businessmen from the city. And there, among the photos of the illustrious guests, was Michael's face. Emily's heart raced. This could be her chance to warn him again. But how would a street girl manage to get into such an exclusive event? She knew she would have to be creative and quick. With renewed determination, Emily began to devise a plan. She observed the event venue, a luxurious hotel in the heart of the city, studying the entrances and exits, the employees coming and going. Her mind worked furiously, seeking a way to infiltrate. Meanwhile, in his office, Michael received an unexpected call. It was an old friend from the police, someone he hadn't heard from in years. "Michael, I need to talk to you urgently," said the voice on the other end of the line. "There's something you need to know, something related to your business and, well, your family." Michael felt a chill down his spine. "What are you talking about, Tom?" "I can't say over the phone," Tom replied, his voice tense. "Can we meet?" "Tonight, at the charity event?" "It's important, Michael. Very important." After hanging up, Michael sat in silence, a whirlwind of emotions and thoughts passing through his mind. First the mysterious girl, now this enigmatic phone call. He had the growing feeling that his life was about to change drastically. As the afternoon progressed, preparations for the charity event were in full swing. Sarah was overseeing the final details, her mask of calm and sophistication firmly in place. But inside, she was panicking. The plan was in motion. There was no turning back now. She just hoped everything would go as planned. The hours passed quickly and soon night fell over New York City. The city lights came on, creating a dazzling scene. Limousines began to arrive at the hotel, bringing the cream of New York society. Photographers crowded at the entrance, capturing images of the illustrious guests parading down the red carpet. Hidden in the shadows of a nearby alley, Emily watched attentively. Her heart was racing, a mixture of nervousness and determination. She knew this could be her only chance to warn Michael, and she couldn't waste it. Carefully, she snuck around to the back of the hotel, her eyes alert to any opportunity. It was then that she spotted a group of young waiters entering through a service door. An idea formed in her mind. Gathering all her courage, Emily approached one of the waitresses, who was a little apart from the group, hurriedly smoking a cigarette. "Excuse me," Emily said, her voice trembling slightly. I'm new here. I forgot my uniform. Would you happen to have an extra I could use?" The waitress looked at her suspiciously, but something in Emily's desperate look moved her. "All right, but be quick. And if anyone asks, you didn't see me, okay?" With her heart pounding, Emily found herself inside the hotel kitchen, dressed as one of the staff. She picked up a tray of canapes and, taking a deep breath, entered the main hall. The luxury of the environment was breathtaking, gleaming crystals, exuberant flowers, and the elite of society in their gala attire. Emily felt completely out of place, but maintained her composure, her eyes scanning the hall in search of Michael. Meanwhile, on the other side of the hall, Michael arrived accompanied by Sarah. He immediately noticed the tension in his wife, attributing it to the stress of the event. "Is everything okay, darling?" he asked, placing his hand on her back. Sarah forced a smile. Of course, just a little nervous about the speech I'll have to give later. Michael nodded, understanding, but an uncomfortable feeling persisted in his chest. He began to circulate through the hall, greeting acquaintances and business partners, always alert for any sign of his friend Tom. It was then that his eyes caught an odd movement. A young waitress seemed to be frantically searching for someone, her awkward movements contrasting with the elegance of the other staff. Something about her seemed familiar. At that moment, Tom appeared at his side, interrupting his thoughts. "Michael, we need to talk. Now." The urgency in Tom's voice alarmed Michael. They discreetly moved away to a quieter corner of the hall. "What's going on, Tom?" Michael asked, his voice low and tense. Tom looked around, making sure no one was listening. "Michael, we've discovered something serious. Your company is being used for a large-scale money laundering operation." Michael felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. "What? That's impossible. I supervise—" His words were interrupted by a shrill scream coming from the center of the hall. All eyes turned to the source of the sound. There was Emily, her tray of canapes forgotten on the floor, pointing directly at Sarah. "She's lying to you!" shouted the girl, her eyes fixed on Michael. "I saw her last night exchanging an envelope with a suspicious man." The hall erupted into chaos. Security guards ran towards Emily, while guests whispered furiously. Sarah, pale as a ghost, tried to maintain her composure. Michael, stunned, looked from Emily to Sarah and then to Tom. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together in a terrible way. "Michael, Sarah began, but her words failed as she saw the expression on her husband's face. At that moment, the doors of the hall burst open violently. A group of police officers entered, led by a man in a suit that Michael recognized as Jack, the same one Emily had mentioned. "Michael Thompson," announced the leader of the group, his voice echoing through the now silent hall. "You are being investigated for financial fraud and money laundering." Michael's world seemed to be crumbling around him. He looked at Sarah, seeking an explanation, a denial, anything. But what he saw in her eyes was only guilt and fear. Emily, taking advantage of the confusion, managed to escape from the security guards and ran to Michael. "Please believe me," she begged. "Your wife is involved in this. I saw it. I heard it." Michael, feeling betrayed and confused, didn't know who to trust. But something in Emily's determined look, the same sincerity that had intrigued him the night before, made him hesitate. "Tom," he called his friend, who was watching the scene with concern, "take care of her. Don't let them take her away." As the police approached, Michael faced Sarah one last time. "What have you done?" he asked, his voice laden with pain and disappointment. Sarah, finally breaking under the pressure, began to cry. "I'm sorry, Michael, I had no choice." Her words were interrupted when the police reached Michael. As he was being led away, he cast one last look at Emily, who was watching him with a mixture of fear and determination. The hall, once filled with laughter and lively conversations, was now plunged into shocked silence. The guests watched, stunned, as one of the most powerful men in the city was taken into custody. Emily, protected by Tom, observed the scene with a heavy heart. She knew that her life had changed irrevocably that night. What had begun as a desperate attempt to help a stranger had turned into something much bigger. Emily, protected by Tom, observed the scene with a heavy heart. She knew that her life had changed irrevocably that night. What had begun as a desperate attempt to help a stranger had turned into something much bigger. As the sirens of the police cars echoed through the New York night, Emily made a silent promise. She would go to the end to prove William's innocence, no matter what it cost. The truth needed to come out, and she would be the key to unraveling this whole mystery. The following morning dawned gray over New York, as if the city itself was mourning the fall of one of its most prominent businessmen. The newspapers and newscasts talked about nothing else: the arrest of William Thompson, accused of financial fraud and money laundering. In a small apartment in the city center, Emily woke up startled. For a moment she was disoriented, not recognizing where she was. Then, the memories of the previous night flooded her mind. The chaos at the charity event, William's arrest, and Tom, the police friend, offering her a safe place to stay. Emily got up, her bare feet touching the cold floor. She walked to the window, observing the city that was awakening. Out there, life went on, but for her, everything had changed. "Good morning." Tom's voice surprised her. He was standing at the door holding a tray with breakfast. "I thought you might be hungry." Emily nodded, grateful. As she ate, Tom watched her with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "We need to talk about what happened yesterday," he finally said. "Do you understand the gravity of the situation you've gotten yourself into?" Emily swallowed hard, but her gaze remained firm. "I know it seems crazy, but I'm telling the truth. William is being framed." Tom sighed, running his hand through his graying hair. "Look, I've known William for years. I never believed he was capable of something like this, but the evidence—" "It's fake," Emily interrupted him, her voice laden with conviction. "I saw his wife, Sarah, talking to that man, Mark. They're plotting something." Tom looked at her for a long moment, as if assessing her sincerity. "All right," he finally said. "I'll listen to you. But we need to be very careful. If what you're saying is true, we're dealing with dangerous people." Meanwhile, in a cold cell at the police station, William was trying to process the events of the last 24 hours. How could his life have crumbled so quickly? He thought of Sarah, of her guilty expression at the moment of his arrest. How could she have betrayed him like this? His thoughts were interrupted when the cell door opened. It was his lawyer, Mr. Johnson. "William, we need to talk," said the lawyer, his voice grave. "The situation is serious. The charges against you are heavy and the evidence seems solid." William shook his head in disbelief. "But I'm innocent. Someone is framing me." "I'm sure of it." Mr. Johnson looked at him sympathetically. "I believe you, William, but we'll need concrete evidence to reverse this situation." At that moment, William remembered Emily, the street girl who had tried to warn him. "There's a girl," he said, his voice gaining strength. "She saw something related to Sarah. We need to find her." On the other side of the city, in a luxurious penthouse, Sarah was pacing back and forth, her nervousness evident in every movement. Mark watched her with a cold smile. "Calm down," he said, his voice soft but with a threatening tone. "Everything is going according to plan." Sarah stopped, staring at him. "What about that girl? She saw us, Mark. If she talks—" Mark stood up, approaching Sarah with calculated steps. "Don't worry about the girl. No one will believe the word of a street girl against the evidence we planted. William will fall, and you'll have everything you've always wanted." Sarah shuddered, remembering the look of betrayal in William's eyes. For a moment, she felt a pang of regret. But then, she looked around at the luxury surrounding her and hardened her heart. She had come too far to turn back now. Back in Tom's apartment, Emily was telling everything she knew, every detail of the conversation she had witnessed between Sarah and Mark, every suspicious expression, every whispered word. Tom listened attentively, taking notes. As Emily spoke, a bigger picture began to form in his mind. "This is bigger than we imagined," he muttered, more to himself than to Emily. "What do we do now?" asked Emily, her voice trembling slightly. For the first time since this whole madness began, she realized the real danger she was getting into. Tom looked at her, his expression serious. "Now we investigate, but very carefully. If what you're saying is true, we're dealing with powerful and dangerous people." At that moment, Tom's phone rang. He answered it, his expression changing from surprise to concern. "I understand. I'll be there as soon as possible." Hanging up the phone, he turned to Emily. "It was from the police station. William is asking to speak to me and to you." Emily felt her heart race. This could be her chance to help William, to start unraveling this whole plot, but it also meant exposing herself, stepping out of the relative safety of anonymity. "I'll go," she said, her voice firm despite the fear she felt. Tom nodded, admiring the young woman's courage. "All right, but stay close to me at all times. We don't know who might be involved in this." As they prepared to leave, Emily looked out the window one more time. The city out there seemed the same, but she knew nothing would ever be the same again. She was about to plunge into a world of intrigue and dangers she had never imagined existed. The journey to the police station was tense and silent. Emily observed the streets passing by, thinking about how drastically her life had changed in such a short time. From a street girl with no prospects, she now found herself at the center of a complex, potentially dangerous plot. Upon arriving at the police station, Tom guided her through the corridors to an interrogation room. William was already there, looking tired and dejected, but his eyes lit up when he saw Emily. "You came," he said, a slight smile forming on his lips. "Thank you." Emily sat at the table, facing William. For a moment, no one spoke. The air was heavy with tension and expectation. Finally, William broke the silence. "I need you to tell me. Everything, Emily. Every detail of what you saw and heard. My life, my freedom depends on it." Emily took a deep breath and began to speak. As she narrated the events, William listened attentively, his expression changing from shock to anger, and then to determination. "This explains a lot," he said when Emily finished. "In the last few months, I noticed inconsistencies in the company's financial reports, documents disappearing. I thought it was just carelessness, but now it all makes sense." Tom, who had been listening attentively, intervened. "William, this changes everything, but we need concrete proof. Accusations against your wife and this Mark guy won't be enough without solid evidence." William nodded, his mind working quickly. "My office," he said suddenly. "There's a hidden safe behind the Rothko painting. Inside, I keep copies of all important company documents from the last 5 years. If someone is manipulating the finances, the discrepancies will appear when compared to these records." Emily and Tom exchanged glances. "But how are we going to access your office?" Emily asked. "Surely it will be under surveillance." William smiled, a glint of cunning in his eyes. "There's a secret entrance, a service elevator that leads directly to my floor. Very few people know about it." Tom frowned. "Still, it's risky. If we get caught, it's our only chance," William interrupted. He turned to Emily, his eyes pleading. "I know I've already asked a lot of you, but I need your help one more time. Could you go in there and get the documents?" Emily hesitated for a moment. Part of her wanted to retreat, to return to the safety of anonymity on the streets. But looking at William, she remembered how he had trusted her when no one else did. She nodded determinedly. "I'll do it." Tom sighed, resigned. "All right, but I won't let you go alone. I'll go with you." William smiled, gratitude evident on his face. "Thank you, both of you. You have no idea how much this means to me." As they discussed the details of the plan in another part of the city, Sarah received a disturbing call. "What?" she exclaimed, her face turning pale. "What do you mean the girl is with them?" On the other end of the line, Mark's voice sounded irritated. "Apparently, William's police friend is protecting her. This complicates things." Sarah began pacing back and forth, panic growing in her chest. What if she tells what she saw? The whole plan could go down the drain. "Calm down," Mark replied, his voice cold as ice. "We have to act fast. I'm sending someone to take care of the situation." Sarah swallowed hard, knowing full well what take care of the situation meant. For a moment she hesitated. Had she gone too far? But then she looked around at the luxury surrounding her, at everything she was about to gain, and hardened her heart. "Do what's necessary," she finally said. Back at the police station, Emily and Tom were preparing to leave. William watched them, a mixture of hope and concern in his eyes. "Be careful," he said. "And remember, the safe only opens with my fingerprint. There's a mold of it hidden in the bottom drawer of my desk. Use it to open the safe." Emily nodded, memorizing every detail. As they left the room, she looked at William one last time. There was something in his eyes, a mixture of gratitude and something more, something that made her heart beat faster. The journey to William's company building was tense. Tom drove in silence, his eyes constantly checking the rearview mirror to make sure they weren't being followed. Emily, in turn, mentally rehearsed each step of the plan. Upon arrival, Tom parked the car a block away. "Remember," he said, turning to Emily, "any sign of danger, anything suspicious, and we leave immediately. Understood?" Emily nodded, her heart pounding against her chest. They got out of the car and headed for the back of the building, where William had said they would find the service elevator entrance. After a few minutes of searching, they located the discreet door, almost invisible against the building's wall. Tom used the code William had provided, and the door opened with a soft click. The elevator took them directly to William's office floor. When the doors opened, they were greeted by a dark and silent corridor. Emily and Tom exchanged tense looks before cautiously stepping out. William's office was exactly as he had described. Emily quickly located the Rothko painting and moved it, revealing the hidden safe. With trembling hands, she opened the desk drawer and found the fingerprint mold. "Quickly," Tom whispered, keeping watch at the door. "We don't know how much time we have." Emily nodded, pressing the mold against the safe's scanner. After a few agonizing seconds, there was a click and the safe door opened. Inside, they found several folders organized by year. Emily quickly grabbed them, placing them in a bag they had brought. It was then that they heard it. Footsteps. Someone was coming down the corridor. Tom signaled for Emily to hide. She quickly closed the safe and crouched behind William's desk, her heart beating so hard she feared it might be heard. The doorknob turned slowly. Emily held her breath, firmly grasping the bag with the documents. The entire plan, all of William's hope, depended on those papers. The door opened, and Emily's heart nearly stopped as she saw a familiar silhouette enter the office. It was Sarah, William's wife. She looked nervous, her eyes darting quickly around the room, as if searching for something specific. Sarah walked directly to William's desk, passing within inches of where Emily was hidden. Emily's heart was beating so hard she feared Sarah might hear it. "Where are they? Where did he hide them?" Sarah muttered to herself, opening drawers and rifling through papers frantically. It was at this moment that Tom decided to act. With a quick movement, he stepped out from his hiding place and blocked the door, preventing Sarah's exit. "Looking for something in particular, Mrs. Thompson?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. Sarah spun around abruptly, shock evident on her face. Who are you? What are you doing here?" Tom took a step forward, showing his badge. "Officer Tom Harris, and I believe I should be asking you that. Question: what is the wife of a man accused of fraud doing in his office in the middle of the night?" Sarah's face visibly paled. She opened her mouth to respond, but no sound came out. Her eyes scanned the office again, as if looking for an escape route. It was then that Emily decided to reveal her presence. Slowly, she stood up from behind the desk, still firmly holding the bag with the documents. Sarah's eyes widened as she saw the young woman. "You!" she exclaimed, a mixture of anger and fear in her voice. "The girl from the restaurant!" Emily stared at Sarah, feeling a courage she didn't know she possessed. "It's over, Mrs. Thompson. We know what you did. We have the proof right here." Sarah seemed to deflate at these words. She stumbled to a nearby chair and collapsed into it, covering her face with her hands. "You don't understand," she murmured, her voice choked. "I had no choice." Tom approached, his expression a mixture of compassion and determination. "I think it's time you told us the whole truth, Mrs. Thompson, for the sake of everyone involved." And so, in that silent office, illuminated only by the moonlight coming through the windows, Sarah began to confess. She told them about the debts she had secretly accumulated, about how Mark had approached her with a tempting proposal to use William's company to launder money in exchange for a significant percentage. "At first, it was just to pay off the debts," Sarah sobbed. "But then I let myself be carried away by greed. I wanted more, always more." Emily and Tom listened in silence, the pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place. "And William?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "He didn't know anything about this?" Sarah shook her head vehemently. "No, William is innocent. He's too good a man. I didn't deserve someone like him." Tom sighed deeply. "Mrs. Thompson, you understand that you'll have to give an official statement about all this, don't you?" Sarah nodded slowly, seeming to have aged years in the last few minutes. "I know, I'm ready to face the consequences of my actions." As Tom made a call to request backup and initiate legal procedures, Emily found herself reflecting on the events of the past few hours. How had a simple decision to warn a stranger triggered a series of events that changed so many lives? Her thoughts were interrupted by a noise coming from the corridor. Heavy footsteps and raised voices were rapidly approaching. Tom, still on the phone, signaled for Emily and Sarah to be quiet. He positioned himself near the door again, his hand instinctively going to the gun in his holster. The door burst open violently, and Mark entered, followed by two intimidating-looking. His eyes scanned the room, taking in the scene before him. Sarah sitting, looking defeated, Emily holding a bag full of documents, and Tom, with his gun now pointed directly at them. "Well, well," said Mark, a cold smile forming on his lips. "Looks like we have a little meeting here. Too bad I wasn't invited." "Mark Davis," said Tom, his voice firm, "you're under arrest on suspicion of fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy." Mark laughed, a humorless sound. "You really think you can arrest me that easily, officer? You have no idea who I am or the power I have." He made a subtle gesture to his henchman, who began to spread out around the room. Emily felt fear growing in her chest, but she stood firm, clutching the bag with the documents as if her life depended on it. The tension in the room was palpable. Tom, still with his gun pointed, tried to keep all the suspects in his field of vision. Sarah seemed to have gone into shock, her eyes darting from Mark to Tom and back again. It was then that the unexpected happened. In a quick movement, Sarah stood up and placed herself between Tom and Mark. "Enough!" she shouted, tears streaming down her face. "It's over, Mark. I told them everything. There's no going back." Mark stared at her, incredulity giving way to fury on his face. "You traitor!" he snarled, advancing towards her. Everything happened in a matter of seconds. Tom tried to intervene, but one of Mark's henchmen attacked him. Emily, seeing the situation rapidly deteriorating, did the only thing she could think of. She ran. With the bag of documents firmly clutched to her, Emily dashed out of the office, running down the corridor towards the service elevator. Behind her, she could hear shouts and the sound of a struggle. Her heart was racing frantically as she repeatedly pressed the elevator button. Come on," she murmured desperately. Finally, the doors opened. Emily entered, pressing the button for the ground floor. As the doors closed, she saw Mark emerge in the corridor, their eyes meeting for a brief moment before the elevator began to descend. Emily knew she wasn't safe yet. She needed to get out of the building and find help. The documents in her possession were the key to unraveling the entire plot and proving William's innocence. When the elevator reached the ground floor, Emily took a deep breath, gathering all her courage. The doors opened and she prepared to run again, not knowing what or who might be waiting for her. Emily burst out of the elevator, her legs carrying her as fast as they could. The cool night air hit her face as she exited the building, but she didn't slow down. Her mind was racing, trying to formulate a plan as she ran. Where could she go? Who could she trust? The police station seemed too obvious, and she wasn't sure who might be involved in this conspiracy. She needed somewhere safe, somewhere she could catch her breath and figure out her next move. As she ran down the streets of New York, dodging late-night pedestrians and taxicabs, an idea struck her. The homeless shelter where she used to stay occasionally. It was open 24/7, and the staff there knew her. It wasn't far, and it might be the last place Mark and his men would think to look for her. With renewed determination, Emily changed her course, zigzagging through alleys and side streets to throw off any potential pursuers. Her lungs burned, and her legs ached, but the weight of the documents in her bag reminded her of what was at stake. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, Emily finally saw the familiar facade of the shelter. She burst through the doors, startling the night attendant. "Emily?" The attendant, a kind-faced woman named Grace, exclaimed. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Panting heavily, Emily managed to gasp out, "Please, need to hide to people after me." Grace's expression turned serious. Without asking any more questions, she quickly ushered Emily to a small office in the back of the shelter. "Stay here," she said firmly. "I'll make sure no one knows you're here." As the door closed behind her, Emily finally allowed herself to collapse into a chair. Her whole body was shaking, a mixture of adrenaline and fear coursing through her veins. She clutched the bag of documents to her chest, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. For a moment, she allowed herself to wonder how her life had come to this point. Just days ago, she was just another face on the streets, invisible to most of the world. Now, she held in her hands evidence that could bring down powerful people and save an innocent man. Emily's thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Grace entered, carrying a bottle of water and a sandwich. "Here," she said gently. "You look like you could use these." Gratefully, Emily accepted the offerings. As she ate and drank, she felt some of her strength returning. Grace sat across from her, concern evident in her eyes. "Emily," she said softly, "I don't know what kind of trouble you're in, but I want you to know you're safe here. Do you need me to call anyone, the police maybe?" Emily shook her head. "Not yet," she said. I need to think. There's so much at stake." Grace nodded understandingly. "All right. You can stay here as long as you need. Try to get some rest. Whatever it is, it'll be clearer in the morning." As Grace left the room, Emily felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. In a world that had often been cruel to her, there were still people willing to offer kindness without question. Exhausted, Emily leaned back in the chair, her eyes growing heavy. She knew she should stay awake, should plan her next move, but the events of the night had taken their toll. Despite her best efforts, she felt herself drifting off to sleep. Emily's dreams were a chaotic mix of images: William behind bars, Sarah's tear-stained face, Mark's cold smile. She tossed and turned, the documents never leaving her grasp even in sleep. She was jolted awake by the sound of raised voices. Disoriented, it took her a moment to remember where she was. Sunlight was streaming through the small window of the office. She had slept through the night. The voices were coming from outside the door. Emily's heart began to race as she recognized one of them. It was Mark. "I'm telling you, we have reason to believe a dangerous fugitive is hiding here," Mark was saying, his voice smooth and authoritative. "We need to search the premises." "I'm sorry, sir," came Grace's firm reply, "but without a warrant, I can't allow you to search our facility. Our client's privacy is paramount." Emily's mind was racing. She needed to get out, but how? The only exit was through the main room where Mark was. She looked around frantically, her eyes landing on the small window. It was a tight fit, but it might be her only chance. With shaking hands, Emily opened the window as quietly as she could. She could hear Mark's voice getting more insistent, and Grace's responses becoming more strained. It was now or never. Taking a deep breath, Emily squeezed through the window, clutching the bag of documents tightly. She dropped to the alley below, wincing as her feet hit the hard pavement. Without looking back, she started running again. As she ran, Emily's mind was working overtime. She couldn't keep running forever. She needed help, needed to get these documents to someone who could use them to bring Mark and his associates to justice and free William. Then she remembered Tom, the police officer who had been with her in William's office. He had believed her, had tried to help. If she could find him, maybe he could protect her and make sure the evidence got to the right people. With a new destination in mind, Emily made her way towards the police station where she had last seen Tom. She stuck to back alleys and less crowded streets, constantly looking over her shoulder for any sign of Mark or his men. As she approached the police station, Emily slowed down, her heart pounding. What if Mark had people inside the police force? What if Tom wasn't there? What if this was all a terrible mistake? But as she stood there, indecision paralyzing her, she saw a familiar figure exiting the station. It was Tom, looking tired and worried. Without thinking, Emily rushed towards him. "Tom!" she called out, her voice hoarse from exhaustion and fear. Tom's head snapped up, his eyes widening as he saw her. In an instant, he was by her side, ushering her quickly to his car parked nearby. "Emily, thank God," he said as they got into the vehicle. "We've been looking everywhere for you. Are you all right? Do you still have the documents?" Emily nodded, holding up the bag. "I'm okay, but Mark, he found me at the shelter. He's looking for me." Tom's expression hardened. "Don't worry, you're safe now. We've got enough evidence to bring him in. Sarah's been cooperating, telling us everything. With these documents, we can finally put an end to this." As Tom started the car and began to drive, Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to relax slightly. The nightmare wasn't over yet, but the end was in sight. "Where are we going?" she asked, noticing they weren't heading back to the police station. "To the FBI field office," Tom replied. "This case has gotten too big for just the NYPD. We're handing it over to the feds. They'll make sure Mark and his entire operation are taken down. As they drove through the busy streets of New York, Emily found herself reflecting on the whirlwind of events that had brought her to this point. From a chance encounter in a restaurant to being at the center of a major criminal investigation, her life had changed in ways she never could have imagined. "Tom," she said quietly, "what's going to happen now? To William? To Sarah? To me?" Tom glanced at her, his expression softening. "William will be released as soon as we process all this evidence. As for Sarah, well, she'll face some consequences for her involvement, but her cooperation will likely mean a reduced sentence." He paused for a moment before continuing. "And you, Emily, you're the hero in all this. Your courage, your determination to do the right thing, it's extraordinary. I promise you, we'll make sure you're taken care of." Emily felt a lump form in her throat. For so long she had been invisible, just another face on the streets. Now she had made a difference. She had helped bring justice, had saved a man's life and reputation. As they pulled up to the imposing FBI building, Emily took a deep breath. She knew that what lay ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be questions to answer, statements to give, perhaps even a trial to testify in. But for the first time in a long time, she felt hope. Hope for justice, hope for a better future, hope for herself. With the bag of documents clutched tightly in her hands, Emily stepped out of the car, ready to face whatever came next. She had started this journey alone, a girl with nothing but her wits and determination. Now, as she walked into the FBI office with Tom by her side, she realized she was no longer alone. The road ahead was uncertain, but Emily was ready. She had found her strength, her voice, and her purpose, and no matter what challenges lay ahead, she knew she would face them head-on, just as she had faced every obstacle in her life. As the doors of the FBI office closed behind them, Emily felt as if she was closing one chapter of her life and opening another. Whatever came next, she was ready for it. She had survived the streets, uncovered a conspiracy, and helped bring down a criminal enterprise. Now it was time to see what else she was capable of. The future, for the first time in Emily's life, looked bright with possibility. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Emily found herself in a conference room surrounded by serious-faced FBI agents who listened intently as she recounted every detail of her experience. Tom stayed by her side throughout, offering support and clarification when needed. As Emily spoke, she could see the agent's expressions change from skepticism to surprise and finally to respect. By the time she finished her story, the room was buzzing with energy as agents began to mobilize, ready to act on the information she had provided. "Miss Emily," said the lead agent, a stern-looking woman named Agent Carter, "I want you to know that your bravery and quick thinking have been instrumental in uncovering a major financial crime network. We've been trying to crack this case for months, and thanks to you, we now have the evidence we need." Emily felt a mixture of pride and disbelief wash over her. She, a former street kid, had accomplished something that even the FBI couldn't do. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice tired but determined. Agent Carter's expression softened slightly. "Now we move quickly. We'll be making arrests within the hour. As for you, we'll need to place you in protective custody for a while, just to ensure your safety." Emily nodded, understanding the necessity but feeling a twinge of anxiety at the thought of being confined again, even if it was for her own protection. As if reading her thoughts, Tom spoke up. "Don't worry, Emily, this is just temporary. Once everything settles down, we'll figure out the next steps for you." The next few days passed in a blur. From the safety of a secure FBI safe house, Emily watched on TV as the news broke about the arrests of Mark Davis and several high-profile businessmen and politicians involved in the money laundering scheme. She felt a surge of satisfaction seeing Mark led away in handcuffs, his usual smug expression replaced by one of defeat. But the moment that truly brought tears to her eyes was when she saw William Thompson being released from custody. The cameras captured his emotional reunion with his daughter, and Emily could see the relief and gratitude in his eyes, even through the TV screen. A week after the arrests, Emily was finally allowed to leave the safe house. Tom came to pick her up, a warm smile on his face. Ready to face the world, hero? He asked teasingly as she got into his car. Emily chuckled, still not used to being called a hero. As ready as I'll ever be, I guess. Where are we going? Well, Tom said, a hint of excitement in his voice. There's someone who's been very eager to meet you. They drove through the bustling streets of New York, finally pulling up in front of an impressive office building in Midtown Manhattan. As they rode the elevator to the top floor, Emily felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation. The elevator doors opened to reveal a spacious, sunlit office, and there, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, was William Thompson. William turned as they entered, his face breaking into a warm smile. Without hesitation, he walked over, sat to Emily and enveloped her in a heartfelt hug. "Emily," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I can't even begin to thank you for what you've done. You saved not just me, but my company, my reputation, and most importantly, my relationship with my daughter." Emily, overwhelmed by the gesture, found herself at a loss for words. I just did what I thought was right," she managed to say. William stepped back, keeping his hands on her shoulders as he looked at her with sincere gratitude. "What you did was extraordinary, and I want to make sure you're taken care of from now on." He guided her to a comfortable seating area, where Tom joined them. "Emily," William continued, "I've been doing a lot of thinking while I was away, about my life, my company, and the kind of legacy I want to leave behind." Emily listened intently as William spoke, his words painting a picture of a man who had undergone a profound change. "I've decided to restructure my company," he explained. "I want to focus more on social responsibility, on giving back to the community, and I want to start a foundation dedicated to helping young people who have fallen through the cracks of society. People like you, Emily, who have so much potential, but haven't been given the chance to shine." Emily's eyes widened as she began to understand where this was going. "I'd like you to be a part of this, Emily," William said, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. "Not just as a beneficiary, but as an integral part of the team that will make this happen. Your experience, your insight, they would be invaluable in shaping this foundation." Emily felt her heart racing. It was more than she had ever dreamed of, a chance not just to change her own life, but to help others who were in the situation she had been in. I don't know what to say," she stammered, tears of happiness forming in her eyes. William smiled, reaching across the table to hold her hand. "Say yes, say you'll help me make a difference." At that moment, looking into the eyes of the man she had saved, and who was now offering to save so many others, Emily knew that her life had changed forever. She was no longer the invisible girl from the streets, but someone with purpose, with a future. "Yes," she said, her voice firm and full of determination. "Yes, let's do this together." And so, from a series of unlikely events and courageous choices, not only was a new opportunity born for Emily, but hope for countless young people, who like her just needed a chance to shine. The sun was setting over New York, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, very much like the day when this whole adventure began. But now, instead of uncertainty and fear, the future shone with promises and possibilities. Emily looked out the window, a soft smile on her lips. Her journey was far from over. In fact, she had the feeling it was just beginning. The following months were a whirlwind of activity for Emily. With William's guidance and support, she threw herself into the work of establishing the New Horizons Foundation. The learning curve was steep. There were legal documents to understand, budgets to plan, and strategies to develop. But Emily approached each challenge with the same determination that had helped her survive on the streets. She also resumed her education, working with tutors to catch up on the years of schooling she had missed. It wasn't easy juggling her studies with her work at the foundation, but Emily was determined to succeed. As the foundation took shape, Emily found herself becoming more confident in her abilities. She was no longer just the girl from the streets. With a lucky break, she was becoming a respected voice in discussions about youth homelessness and social inequality. One sunny spring morning, Emily climbed the steps of the newly inaugurated headquarters of the New Horizons Foundation. The building, a renovated old factory in the heart of a low-income neighborhood in New York, gleamed with a fresh coat of paint and the shine of hope. As she entered, Emily was greeted by a buzz of excited voices and the sound of laughter. The lobby was full of young people, some as young as she had been when everything started, others a bit older. They all shared the gleam in their eyes of those who glimpse a better future. "Good morning, Emily," greeted Mrs. Johnson, the middle-aged receptionist, who treated all the young people as if they were her own children. "William's already arrived and is waiting for you in the conference room." Emily smiled and thanked her, feeling a wave of gratitude for being surrounded by such caring people. As she walked through the corridors, she couldn't help but reflect on how much her life had changed. In the past few months, Emily had not only become an integral part of the Foundation's team, but had also resumed her studies. With William's support and a team of dedicated teachers, she was preparing to take her GED at the end of the year. As she entered the conference room, Emily found William bent over a pile of papers, his brow furrowed in concentration. Seeing her, his face lit up with a warm smile. Emily, glad you're here. We have a lot to discuss today." Emily sat down, curious. "What's on the agenda, William?" William pushed some papers in her direction. "I've been thinking about expanding our mentorship program. We've been receiving so many requests from other communities. I think it's time we took new horizons beyond New York." Emily's eyes widened as she examined the documents. They were proposals for new foundation units in other cities across the United States. "This is amazing," she exclaimed, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. "But how are we going to manage all this?" William smiled, that smile that always made her feel like anything was possible. "That's where you come in, Emily. I want you to lead this expansion project." Emily felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. "Me? But, William, I'm still learning. I don't know if I'm ready for such a big responsibility." William leaned forward, his eyes meeting hers. "Emily, you've already shown more courage, determination, and compassion than most people demonstrate in a lifetime. You understand, better than anyone, what these young people need. I trust you to make this work." William's words ignited a flame inside Emily. She thought about her own journey, the cold nights on the streets, the hopelessness that had almost consumed her. And then she thought of all the young people out there who were still in that situation, waiting for a chance, for someone to believe in them. "All right," she finally said, her voice firm. "I accept the challenge." The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of planning and discussions. When Emily finally left the foundation, night had fallen. She paused for a moment on the sidewalk, looking up at the starry New York sky. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. It was Tom, the police officer who had become a close friend and constant supporter of the foundation. "Hi, Emily," he greeted with a smile. "Working late today, huh?" Emily smiled back. "Yeah, we have big plans for the foundation. Sometimes it feels like there aren't enough hours in the day." Tom nodded, understanding. "I know how it is, but don't forget to take care of yourself too, okay? You can't help others if you're exhausted." Tom's words touched Emily. It was true, sometimes she got so lost in the work that she forgot to take care of herself. "Thanks, Tom. I'll remember that." They walked together for a while, talking about recent events. Tom told her that Mark had been sentenced to a long prison term, and that Sarah, after serving her reduced sentence, had moved to the countryside, seeking a fresh start. When they reached the corner where their paths separated, Tom turned to Emily with a serious look. "You know, Emily, I'm really proud of you, of what you've accomplished, of what you're doing for others. You've turned a terrible situation into something incredible." Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. "Thank you, Tom, for everything. I don't know if I could have done it without your support." They said goodbye with a warm hug, and Emily continued on her way, her heart full of gratitude and determination. When she arrived home, a small but cozy apartment she could now call her own, Emily allowed herself a moment of reflection. She thought about the scared girl she had been just a year ago, sleeping in dark alleys and struggling to survive day by day. Now she had a roof over her head, food in the fridge, and most importantly, a purpose. She was making a difference, not just in her own life, but in the lives of so many others. As she prepared for bed, Emily looked at the framed photo on her bedside table. It was a picture of her with William, Tom, and the foundation team, taken on the day of the foundation's inauguration, all smiling, full of hope for the future. Emily gently touched the photo, a soft smile on her lips. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, expanding the foundation, continuing her studies, dealing with the challenges that would certainly come. All of this would be a test of her strength and determination. But she also knew she wasn't alone. She had friends, mentors, and an inner strength she had discovered through adversity. As she lay down, Emily made a silent promise to herself and to all the young people the foundation would help. She would do everything in her power to create new horizons, not just for herself, but for all those who, like her, just needed a chance to shine. With this comforting thought, Emily closed her eyes, ready to dream of the possibilities that tomorrow would bring. The sun had barely risen when Emily woke up, feeling the weight of responsibility and the excitement of the possibilities that the new day brought. Today was the day she would present the expansion plan for the New Horizons Foundation to the board of directors. As she got ready, Emily couldn't help but think about how her life had transformed. Just over a year ago, she was a street girl struggling to survive. Now, she was about to present a project that could change the lives of thousands of young people across the United States. Arriving at the foundation, Emily was greeted by William, who offered her an encouraging smile. "Ready for the big day?" he asked, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. Emily took a deep breath. "I think so. A little nervous, but ready." The conference room was full when they entered. Board members, potential partners, and even some government representatives were present. Emily felt the weight of all the gazes on her, but she forced herself to stay calm. With slightly trembling hands, she began her presentation. As she spoke, her confidence grew. She shared stories of young people the foundation had already helped, presented data on the program's impact, and finally revealed the ambitious expansion plan. "With this plan," Emily concluded, her voice firm and passionate, "we can bring hope and opportunities to young people across the country. We can create not just new horizons, but a new future for America." When she finished, there was a moment of silence. Then slowly the applause began. Emily saw smiles and nods of approval throughout the room. William in the back had tears in his eyes. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. With the plan approved, Emily found herself immersed in a world of contracts, negotiations, and logistical planning. Sometimes she felt overwhelmed, but the memory of her own journey and the thought of the young people who would be helped kept her motivated. However, not everything was smooth sailing. As the foundation grew and gained visibility, unexpected challenges arose. Some local politicians, uncomfortable with the program's success, began to create bureaucratic obstacles. There was even an incident where a group of drug dealers, fearing losing their influence over the community's youth, threatened one of the foundation's new units. It was during this turbulent period that Emily discovered an inner strength she didn't even know she possessed. She faced the challenges head-on, negotiating with politicians, dialoguing with community leaders, and when necessary, turning to Tom and his police colleagues for help in ensuring the safety of the foundation's youth and staff. One night, after a particularly difficult day, Emily found herself alone on the foundation's rooftop, looking out at the city that never slept. She was exhausted, but at the same time, she felt a sense of accomplishment she had never experienced before. "I thought I'd find you here," said a familiar voice behind her. It was Alex, who had become not just an ally in the foundation, but a close friend. "Sometimes I need to come up here to remember why we're doing all this," Emily replied, with a small smile. Alex joined her at the railing. "You know, Emily, you surprise us every day. The way you handled those politicians today, it was incredible." Emily laughed softly. "Honestly, I was terrified, but then I remembered all the times I had to negotiate on the streets to survive. In a way, this isn't so different." Alex looked at her with admiration. "That's why you're perfect for this job. You understand both worlds." They stood in silence for a moment, contemplating the city below. Finally, Emily spoke. "Alex, do you think we're really making a difference? Sometimes it feels like for every young person we help, there are dozens more we can't reach." Alex turned to face her. Emily, look at yourself. A year ago, you were one of those young people on the streets. Now you're leading a project that's changing lives across the country. If that's not making a difference, I don't know what is. Alex's words touched Emily deeply. She knew he was right. Every transformed life was a victory, and she was determined to keep fighting for each one of them. In the months that followed, the New Horizons Foundation continued to grow and overcome obstacles. New units were opened in other cities, partnerships were formed with companies and universities, and more young people found hope and opportunities through the program. Emily, in turn, continued to grow both personally and professionally. She finally took her GED and was accepted into a social work program at a local university. Balancing her studies with her work at the foundation was a challenge, but one she embraced with enthusiasm. One day, while walking down the foundation's corridor, Emily stopped in front of a mural filled with photos. They were images of young people who had gone through the program, some now in college, others in promising jobs, all with bright smiles and eyes full of hope. At that moment, Emily felt a wave of emotion hit her. She remembered her own journey, the cold nights on the streets, the fear and uncertainty. And now, here she was, not only having transformed her own life, but helping others do the same. With tears in her eyes but a smile on her face, Emily gently touched one of the photos. "New horizons," she whispered to herself, "for all of us." And with that thought, she turned and continued on her way, ready to face any challenge the future might bring. Because now she knew, with absolute certainty, that with determination, compassion, and a little help, anyone could reach new horizons. The auditorium was packed. Hundreds of eager and expectant faces turned towards the stage, where Emily, now 25, adjusted the microphone. It was the 5th anniversary of the New Horizons Foundation, and the celebration event had attracted people from all over the country. Emily took a deep breath, her gaze sweeping across the crowd. She saw William in the front row, his hair now completely grey, but his eyes still shining with the same enthusiasm as always. Next to him were Tom and Alex, both smiling encouragingly, and scattered throughout the audience were dozens of familiar faces, young people who, like her, had found a second chance through the foundation. 5 years ago, Emily began, her voice firm and clear, I was a street girl with no hope and no future. Today, I stand before you not just as the executive director of this foundation, but as living proof that change is possible. As she spoke, Emily couldn't help but reflect on the incredible journey that had brought her here. The last 5 years had been a roller coaster of challenges and triumphs. In the past 5 years, she continued, the New Horizons Foundation has grown beyond our wildest dreams. We started with a single unit here in New York, and today we are present in 15 states, having directly impacted more than 50,000 young people. A murmur of admiration ran through the auditorium. Emily smiled, remembering the endless nights of work, the exhausting trips, the difficult negotiations that made this expansion possible. But numbers are only part of the story. The real impact is in the lives transformed, the dreams realized, the communities strengthened. She paused, her eyes meeting William's. He nodded slightly, encouraging her to continue. Today, I want to share with you some of these transformation stories. With a gesture, Emily invited 3 young people to come up on stage. Each of them represented a story of overcoming that moved the audience. There was Marcus, who left drug trafficking to become a respected teacher in his community. Anna, who overcame years of abuse to become a lawyer dedicated to defending women's rights. And John, a former street boy who was now a successful entrepreneur, employing other young people from the foundation. As the young people shared their stories, Emily felt a wave of pride and gratitude. She knew that each of these transformed lives represented not just the foundation's work, but the effort and determination of these young people to change their own realities. After the moving testimonials, Emily took the floor again. These stories are just a few among thousands. They remind us that, with opportunity and support, any young person can overcome the most difficult circumstances and achieve their dreams. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the audience once more. But our work is far from over. There are still many young people out there who need our help, who need to believe that a better future is possible. It was then that Emily revealed the Foundation's next big step. It is with great emotion that I announce today the launch of our new program, Seeds of the Future. This program goes beyond education and professional training. It will provide microcredit and mentoring for young entrepreneurs, allowing them to not only transform their own lives, but also become agents of change in their communities. The announcement was received with enthusiastic applause. Emily saw faces light up with hope and possibilities. "This is just the beginning," she continued, her voice laden with emotion and determination. "Together, we can create a future where no young person needs to sleep on the streets, where every child has the opportunity to realize their full potential." As she concluded her speech, Emily felt a wave of emotion hit her. She thought of the scared girl she was a few years ago, sleeping in dark alleys with no hope for tomorrow. And now here she was, leading an organization that was changing thousands of lives. "Each of us has the power to make a difference," she said, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "Whether through a kind word, an act of generosity, or simply believing in someone's potential when no one else does. Together, we can create not just new horizons, but a new dawn for our youth and for our country." When Emily finished, the auditorium erupted in applause. People stood up, many with tears in their eyes. William was the first to climb onto the stage, enveloping Emily in a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. One by one, others joined them on stage. Tom, Alex, the young people who had shared their stories, and many others whose lives had been touched by the Foundation. Soon, the stage was full, a living representation of the impact that an idea nurtured by love and dedication can have. As she hugged her friends and colleagues, Emily looked out at the audience. She saw smiling faces, eyes bright with hope and determination, and at that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that she had found her purpose in life. The road ahead would still be full of challenges, she knew that. There would be obstacles to overcome, prejudices to combat, systems to change. But looking at the people around her, people who believed in the possibility of a better future and were willing to work for it, Emily felt an unshakable confidence. The sun was setting outside, painting the New York sky with shades of orange and pink. But inside the auditorium, and in the hearts of all present, a new day was dawning. A day full of promises, of possibilities, of new horizons. And Emily, the girl who once had nothing but her courage and determination, was now at the forefront of this new dawn. She knew her journey was far from over. In fact, in many ways it was just beginning. But she was ready. Ready to face any challenge, overcome any obstacle, and continue fighting for a world where every young person had the chance to shine. Because now she knew, with every fiber of her being, that dreams, no matter how impossible they may seem, have the power to become reality. And so, with a heart full of gratitude for the past, determination for the present, and hope for the future, Emily embraced her destiny. A destiny not just of transforming her own life, but of being a beacon of hope for countless others, illuminating the path to a brighter future, a new horizon for all.